What is going on, you guys? Theo here with the big review, back yet again with another King of Fighters All-Star video, and today we are going to be taking a look at some damage comparisons for the new Athena card set and seeing just how big of a difference it does make versus some of these other card sets that we might already have, so that way you can decide if it is worth your Ruby investment or not. And we are also going to be taking a look at the Hall of Elements Exchange Shop switchover. But before we get into all of that, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe. We also have 1 day left for you to get your entries in for the giveaway for the Google or iOS gift card, so make sure that if you have not already done that, the link will be in the description on how to enter. But let's go ahead and get into it. So first thing I want to cover is going to be the Hall of Elements Exchange Shop switchover. So as you can see here, I've got a literal murderer's row of characters here. In fact, I don't even have enough coins to pick all of these, but man, I mean, look at this. You've got Yashiro first and foremost, probably the best FES in the game. If you guys haven't heard, he's just OP. Then you got Chris, you got Chrysalit. I mean, I don't even know what to say. Orochi, he's kind of sus, but you know what? When you've got a Yashiro, a Chrysalit, and a Chris on this lineup, you can't complain. I'm just kidding, guys. My lineup sucks. Hopefully you did better than me. But yeah, if you haven't already done so, make sure you check this out. It switched over yesterday, as it always does, each and every month. So take a look. You might have gotten luckier than I did, but as you can see here, I did not do very well. The only character that I am probably going to be picking up out of this lineup, and actually I'm just going to go ahead and do that now, is Orochi. So yeah, the rest of these guys probably going to expire. However, I might pick up the Ashe. We'll see. My current Ashe is at Awakening level 4. I don't have another memory for him laying around, so I wouldn't be able to take him to A5 if I picked this one up. But we'll see. I might pick it up before it goes away. The rest of them, yeah, they can just sit there. But anyway, just wanted to make sure I reminded you guys so that way you don't miss out in your own. See who you got. Let me know in the comments section if you got anything good. But today, the main topic of our video is we're going to be taking a look at the new Athena card set. Like we always do when a new card set comes out, if we feel like it is worth picking up, we pick it up, and then we do some damage comparisons to check out and see just how much of a difference it does make versus some of the other card sets in the game, so that way you guys can decide whether or not it is worth the investment of your hard-earned rubies. So today that is going to be what we do, and we are going to be using Athena in order to demonstrate these card sets. So first and foremost, we are going to start with the Athena set itself, and we're going to take a look and see just how this card is set up. So for those of you who are living under a rock, this is the card set that you can currently get through the banner for the SS characters, and basically what it is going to do is it's going to increase your fighter's defense by 7%, and then on its effect it is going to increase attack equal to 50% of a defense, and a 30% chance to deal additional damage equal to 180% of defense upon landing an active skill. It also decreases your damage received by 60% if a defensive type fighter's HP is 20% or less. So basically, breaking this down here, you're looking at a flat 21% increase to your defense stat for all three of these cards, so not too shabby whatsoever. As you can see here, all three of these are going to increase your defense. And then when you take a look at the effect, kind of going through here, you're obviously going to have some defense to attack conversion, which is always very nice for your defensive type characters. Particularly, I could see this, and I know I've said this in the past, but I could see this card set being very, very strong in PvP on a character like Psyche. Now, obviously, the first character that's going to come to mind for most people is going to be the character that is featured on the card set itself, which is Athena, particularly our newest Athena, the SS Athena. And while she is definitely a great beneficiary for this card, I would say that there are many, many characters in the game that are going to be able to benefit from this guy, so it's definitely not relegated to her. However, I figured in the interest of just keeping things thematic, we would go ahead and use her to demonstrate these. But this is by no means today meant to be a breakdown, nor a review, nor a damage comparison for Athena herself. However, you can pretty much glean from this kind of those things as that pertains to the card sets. But really, this is just about comparing this card set to other card sets in the game as far as just raw damage. And we'll get into the parameters of how we're going to do that here momentarily. But When you take a look at the rest of the effect, the 30% chance to deal additional damage equal to 180% of defense upon landing an active skill is really what sets this card set apart. Basically, it is not only going to have defense to attack conversion and buffs to defense, but it is also going to have almost an Athena-like effect where you are going to be getting burst damage on it as well. So whenever you see it go off, you will notice a huge difference in your damage output, and you'll be able to see some of it in this footage. There will be times where it will proc and you'll be able to tell kind of the damage difference there, but it's very nice to have that kind of hybrid between, this is almost a hybrid between a Kaya set and an Athena set in a lot of ways, and we'll talk about how those things differ here momentarily. But then you get into the last effect, which is decreased damage received by 60% if a defense fighter's HP is 20% or less. So basically what this does is it is going to give your characters some additional tankiness whenever they are in the red, which is very nice to have. Obviously you are going to have a lot of characters that are going to take advantage of this set that aren't on the glassier side, they're more on the tanky side, so being able to make them just that much more tankier is going to be to their benefit in a lot of situations. But that is pretty much going to be this card set. It's very strong. A lot of people feel that it is a straight upgrade over the Kaya set, which I do agree with, but we will get into things here momentarily so that you can see it in action. Now, as far as the card sets we are going to be comparing this set to, I decided in due diligence to do more than just what you would typically expect on your defensive type characters for science. So whenever we compare it to some of these other card sets that it's not necessarily in the same vein as, so we will be comparing it obviously to the Kaya set, and then we're going to be comparing it also to the budget Mr. Big set for players that are free to play, so that they can see kind of the differences between what these more kind of whale sets, if you want to put it that way, and your free to play sets will kind of garner as far as your differences in damage. And then you're going to have comparisons to sets, as I had briefly mentioned there, that it doesn't necessarily stack up as equally to, so I'm going to go ahead, just for the sake of science, throw in Akane, Leah, so on and so forth, just so you can see the differences. But as you can see here, this is going to be your Kaya set, which has become kind of the default defensive type set over time, and you're going to see it's going to increase defense by 7%, the same as the Athena set. And then as far as the secondary effects, it's going to increase attack equal to 45% of defense, and then you're going to obtain 10% additional attack for 30 seconds and grant super armor for 5 seconds when tagging in. So the Kaya set has been the de facto best set for defensive type fighters for a long time. However, it does have some kind of idiosyncrasies to it, particularly the tagging in section of its effect, not necessarily a championship friendly effect. So overall with this set, it is great. It's an awesome set, and if you have it, you should definitely be using it. However, I do think that right there you automatically kind of see where this is going as far as the key differences and what would make the Athena set more desirable. However, when you take a look at the defense to attack conversion, it does have a very nice bit of it at 45%, and then the additional 10% attack for 30 seconds is also very nice. However, again, it's going to be one of those things where you're also going to be looking at burst damage on the Athena set. So when you compare these two sets across the board, it's pretty easy to decide on paper which one of these sets is better. But again, we're going to get in and kind of compare the two and do our due diligence to kind of show you guys just what you're looking at. So that is going to be what we do here, guys, and as always, we're going to be doing it through the training section in Championship, and we are just going to be going through a couple of rotations, a couple of combinations of the skills. We are not going to have any other cards attached to our Athena so that we can get as proper a gauge as possible for these card sets. I don't want any other effects or any other stat buffs or anything like that from any other cards kind of muddying the waters, so to speak, but that's going to be what we do. Now, there's one other thing I do want to point out, and this is a hot topic in the community right now, but when it comes to the stones for Athena, a lot of people are asking, debating, questioning whether or not you should be going for defense or attack on her. So there are actually quite a few people who have sacrificed their plugs in order to compare both sets of stones on her across the board. And basically what they have found, and you're going to get a different answer from everybody you talk to at this point that hasn't done these DPS comparisons. However, if somebody has personally done them, I find that they seem to have kind of a similar story to tell. That basically, if you are ever planning on using any set that is not going to be predicated upon defense, so if you're not going to be using Athena set or Kaya set or the like, then you're going to want the attack ones. However, if you plan on using the defensive card sets, you're going to want the defensive ones. So it really comes down to, if you want the overall versatility to be able to use card sets like Leah or Akane on her, which I don't really necessarily see a lot of situations right now where you would do so, then the attack ones would probably make the most sense. However, if you're planning on using some of these defensive card sets, then you will want to go with the defense stones. So it's up to your preference. It's still up for debate. Like I said, a lot of people have been discussing this. There's really not a great clear-cut answer or winner on this yet. But again, it kind of comes down to who you talk to. So just wanted to throw that in here. I do have the defensive ones on my Athena, and like I said, you can go whichever route you want to go, and you're probably going to get a lot of mileage out of it regardless, because she is a great character. But again, reviewing her is not the point of this video. She is not even here for any other reason than just to demonstrate these cards for us. Really, it's all about cards today. So let's go ahead and jump into the comparisons and take a look. Alright you guys, so here we are, and as you can see on screen, we are using the Athena set in this demonstration, and we're just going to go through, we're going to use a couple of combinations of skills, and we're going to do each rotation a couple of times just to get kind of a proper idea of what we're looking at for DPS. So I start out here with a 1, 2, 3, which is just basic run through the string of skills just to see kind of what the damage is and get a good comparable number. Right now it's looking around 66 or so, or 65 is kind of the median number there. And then we're going to go into a 1, 3, 2 scenario, and that is going to obviously bear us far more damage, looking like we are getting about 71 there. And then if we wait for our cooldowns here, we're going to go ahead and compare again. So right now, again, we are looking around 65 for the 1, 2, 3, 71 for the 1, 3, 2, and there we did not have our random damage proc for our burst. So without burst, we're looking at around 61 or so. And then we'll do this one more time here, just 1, 2, 3. Looking at 62, looks like we got our burst off, and you'll be able to tell with these damage numbers when you get your burst or when you don't. It's pretty obvious. So that will skew your numbers. Unfortunately, there's no way that we can kind of predict that or control that. So it's one of those things where you'll be able to see here kind of just a good idea of what the damage differences are for this card set, whether you get the burst or you don't get the burst. And again, this is not about, you know, best in slot for Athena. This is not necessarily about best rotations for Athena. This is just damage output based on this card set versus others. So again, just to reiterate, the 1, 3, 2, there we are without burst, looking at around 60, 61 or so, which is pretty much a normal rate of damage for what we've noticed so far without burst. And then again, we will use the 1, 2, 3, and again 61, 62, 63, 64, and that looks like with burst damage. So now that we have done that, we are going to go ahead and look at the Kaya set and see how it does in the exact same way, the exact same string of skills. So again, 1, 2, 3, and you are looking at about 48, 47 or so. We'll do it one more time here to kind of compare, but you guys will see here that it's a pretty decent difference between the two card sets, but it's not anything major. So you're pretty much going to see that sometimes it's pretty much right on par with the other, and sometimes it's not. It's just one of those things between these two sets. They are very comparable. They are very similar. So sometimes it is going to be one of those things where there's not necessarily going to be a clear-cut answer on these, but I would say that the Athena set is probably the set that I would definitely pick over the Kaya set just overall, being that you do have that chance at burst. But it's one of those things where if you don't have the Athena set and you already have the Kaya set, then you might not be missing out on too much to where you're going to be kicking yourself in the butt for months on end until it comes back, hopefully. But as you'll see here, though, the damage comparisons are pretty similar for these two sets. I was actually kind of surprised when I was running these numbers myself that they were so comparable. But it just goes to show you how similar these two card sets are. But it's really one of those things, again, where the burst is going to set you apart, and then you'll see there the finisher does do a little bit less damage than it did with the Athena set. So that's pretty much going to be your two big defensive sets. We're going to move on now, and we're going to use the budget set. And I wanted to do this just for players that are free to play, that don't necessarily have a chance to get these kinds of sets, because a lot of times I feel like new players, beginner players, they feel like they're left out or they're missing out on something huge. And I really wanted to show those players what they're missing out on, because it's really not an enormous difference as far as your damage output is concerned. Now, obviously, with the other effects that are factored into those other two sets that we've already gone over, you are missing out on those things. There's no really way around that. But as far as the raw damage output, hopefully this puts some people's minds at ease with that, because you're really not missing out on a major amount of damage whenever you compare this card set to the other kind of more premium sets in the game. You know, there is a difference, but I wouldn't say it's such a difference to where, you know, you're going to need to go on the forums and rage over it or whatever the case may be. Although, if that's your prerogative, you're going to do that anyway. It's not going to take me telling you not to keep you from doing it, but I digress. However, as you'll see, it's pretty comparable. So really what I was trying to kind of show you guys here is, for those of you that don't have the set, it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. You know, it is what it is. You're free to play. Hey, you're the real winner because you're saving your money, right? Right. So that's pretty much going to be that card set. This is now where we're going to start comparing the set to card sets that you wouldn't necessarily really be using on these types of characters for the most part. But I felt like in my due diligence that I would go ahead and do this for science, like I've mentioned. So we'll just go ahead and we'll compare here. First off with the Leah set. So as you'll see there, damage output, pretty darn good considering. When you compare it to the other two premium card sets, it's actually numbers-wise comparing a little bit closer to the Mr. Big set that we just showed. So that's kind of interesting that damage numbers-wise, it's pretty comparable to that set as far as performance goes here. But we're going to take these through. Like I said, we're doing these on the exact same skill rotations, and we're doing these each a couple of times to factor out crits and things like that, so that way you can kind of get a good aggregate of where these card sets are going to fall as far as performance is concerned. So no other cards attached to this character whatsoever, so you're just seeing her raw kit with these card sets in action. And again, the damage output here, not too shabby. And again, my Athena does have the defensive set stones, so if you have the attack set stones, which again there is debate on which of those is better for her. However, if you have the attack set on her, then those numbers are probably going to be much higher. So again, when you really get into that debate, if you were to factor that into this and kind of adjust accordingly for this kind of a card set, which is more offensive based, then you basically start to see why they're so comparable as far as the defensive stones and the attack stones versus what card set you're using. So overall, I don't think it's going to make an enormous difference on your numbers at the end of the day. It really just comes down to what you prefer. Now, this is going to be the Akane set, and this one's a little bit harder to gauge, as always, because it does have burst, and you'll be able to kind of tell when the burst damage does go off on it. But this one is trending and tracking closer to kind of, not necessarily as much, but close to the Leah set, as we can see here with some of these damage numbers. So if we take a look here, the Leah set was doing around, I'd say between 51 and 55, and this one is doing very similar numbers. So again, if you had the attack stones, you could kind of adjust that up and probably be hitting closer to those 65s or so that those defensive card sets were hitting. But it's, again, going to come down to what role this character or that character, whatever character you have these card sets attached to. Because, again, this is not about Athena, this is about the cards. And if you were kind of adjusting for that, it would depend on what you're doing as far as what card set you're going to choose for the role. But it's interesting to see kind of just what the kind of comparisons are on these numbers. And then finally, the last set that I wanted to throw in here is the Salt set itself, the Tekken set, because I've seen people bring it up, and the numbers on a Tekken set are never going to equal out to any of these other card sets, because this set is more used for its effects and not its raw damage. So really it's tough to compare this one because you're not using it for the same reasons. However, you can tell down there for her PG gain, it is through the roof compared to her base kit, just based solely on the fact that this card set is doing so much for her in that regard. But the numbers on it are respectable. You know, being that it is going to be a more crit-based set, the numbers can fluctuate quite a bit. But you'll be able to kind of get a rough idea. I'd say that the general consensus here, as far as the numbers I was seeing, was between 35 and 40. You know, sometimes, but depending on crit, you would do a little bit more, but not a major amount. So yeah, overall, guys, that's pretty much going to be the card comparisons. And basically, what you can tell and glean from this is that depending on what you decide to do with Athena, and again, I hate to make this about Athena, but depending on what stones you're picking, you're going to be doing very comparable numbers across the board, at least with just base kit and cards considered. So let's get into our final thoughts on this Athena set. So what can we take away from those numbers? So basically what we have been able to gather here is the fact that the Athena set overall, in my opinion, is definitely going to be the optimal defensive set for defensive characters, and that wasn't a surprise whatsoever. You can pretty much tell just based solely upon the effects of this card set that it is going to be a straight upgrade over Kaya. However, when it comes to raw numbers, you can tell from these comparisons, even if you adjust for some error and you kind of take out a little bit of the RNG with burst and things of that nature, the damage output for both these sets is going to be pretty comparable. And even then, when you compare it to some of the more offensive ones and you try to adjust accordingly based on stones, which obviously mine are not maxed out, but again, it is not about Athena on that, so I don't really try to take that into account with the cards themselves, but more so when it comes to the debate on the stones. They're very, very similar numbers, and overall, it comes down to your preference and what you're going to be using your characters specifically for. If you're someone who is absolutely trying to min-max your account and your characters and their output overall and their performance, then you're going to want this set. However, if you're someone who is a baller on a budget and you don't necessarily want or feel comfortable in going in on the card banner, because the rates on the card banner, I will say, are a little bit unforgiving, at least in my personal experience. However, I know several of my friends who have done exceedingly well on it even. So, you know, your mileage may vary there, that's all RNG, but what I'm basically getting at here is if you're somebody who is afraid to go in or kind of on the fence on going in on this card set and feel as though you may be missing out on something that is going to be irreplaceable, I wouldn't necessarily put this card set in that category. I do think it is the optimal defensive set, but like I said, as you can tell from the numbers, you can get by on some of these other sets and do just fine with your defensive characters without it. However, having it definitely going to be nice. So it's up to you guys if you feel like now that you have seen all these numbers and seen all these things in action, whether or not it is worth the investment of your rubies or not. However, I will say I'm pretty happy that I have it, and I don't think I'm going to be going in on cards again. I would love to have the Mai finisher. I'm still on the fence in that regard. However, I think I'm probably bowing out of the SS banner after yesterday's whaling video. So hopefully you guys found this of benefit in some way, shape, or form. Hopefully you found this helpful. But we'll be going in and we'll be taking a look at these two characters in depth and doing kind of breakdowns on both of them over the coming days in different game modes and so on and so forth, so that you guys can see their overall performance. But again, if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget, today is the last day for you to get in your entry for the gift card giveaway. Link will be in the description. And I will see you guys in tomorrow's video. You all enjoy the rest of your day. Peace.
Game over.